You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
Hello and welcome back to Enterprise Planning with Maria, Jamie, and Bill. We are back with our discussion of Part 2 of Episode 1, Broken Bow. All right, welcome to the second part of the episode, which I will be summarizing. I refer to this section of the episode as D-Cups and Dialogue, for reasons that will become really apparent as we go on. So the crew is in the sick bay with Clang. The lights go out. Dun, dun, dun. It's the aliens attack. It's the Pebble people. They are in red vision. It's kind of like night vision, except red. Everybody starts to freak out. Clang starts screaming something. And Archer says to Sato, "Can you tell him to shut up?" At which point she just screams, "Shut up!" Which is like if you're in a family with a lot of kids and one of the parents says, "Go tell your brother dinner's ready." And he just goes over.
That's it.
Now we're going to get into this about Sato. I have some serious questions about her qualifications for being on this.
She certainly panics easily.
She does, and it would be
immediately.
It would be one thing if she were. This is why I question if Starfleet in this show is actually a military organization, because it doesn't feel like they have a lot of hierarchical discipline, and they don't feel like they've been trained to deal with these situations, because this isn't humanity's first warp ship. This is just their first one that can go warp 5. So presumably they've been tootling around.
So there's no Federation yet, right?
There's no Federation.
So if presumably during this time after like the Vulcans, after they like started getting in with the Vulcans,
first contact, this is the time period where
humanity is like moving away from wars and stuff, right? So maybe they're a military organization that hasn't had a war in a very long time.
That's what it sort of feels like. Like if you think of Starfleet, quote unquote, today, like the Starfleet we are familiar with, even at the Next Generation point in time, there is like they have gotten, quote, supposedly gotten past the need for money or for war or for any of that, and they are purely dedicated to the betterment of humanity. And so if you're government or whatever you want to call Starfleet, if that is the goal of it, and it does seem like this sort of plays out in other shows, that there are sort of different sections. So there's like a whole science group, there's a whole group that's dedicated to space travel, but there's probably also a whole group that's dedicated to like making sure everybody on Earth has enough food or whatever, right? So it feels like, although there are military personnel, that's only one component of Starfleet, I guess. And I'm sure there are people who are screaming at I don't know how many people are listening to this, but I'm sure we have 1 to 2 friends who are listening to this who would probably know exactly what we're talking about and could explain this to us.
Future Starfleet, they're like going all over the galaxy and they're coming across things that are dangerous. So they're like probably very well trained. But this Starfleet isn't really traveling around yet. So do they come across anything that's dangerous? It would explain why they don't seem to have any combat training.
Well, and it's interesting that you say that, because there was a sort of a joke at the end, but it's true right at the very end where they go, "Oh, hopefully that's the last time we get shot at." It's sort of a nod to the watcher, but it's also like this is sort of their experience with aliens has been the Vulcans, who have been, peaceful. If assholes, they've still been peaceful. They've kind of been jerks.
To be fair, even like in our military today, not everybody has like combat experience. True. I have a friend who was just an Air Force band conductor. So he had to go through basic training, but he probably would not have been very good in a crisis situation.
Yeah. What's bothering me about this is I don't need them to be military. I don't need them to be, but it feels like there's no hierarchical structure. Like it's all very fast and loose. This feels less like Starfleet and more like a startup. Like these are all a bunch of tech bros who are getting together to move fast and break things.
Yeah, man, we don't have offices.
Yeah.
We're all in cubes.
I know you haven't gotten to their their casual jackets yet, but their casual jackets are definitely startup looking.
It's sort of especially egregious with Sato, who, again, like I said, if it would be fine if they made a big deal about her being a civilian, but she is wearing a Starfleet uniform. She has a little pip indicating her rank. And yeah, she's not maybe combat trained or stuff like that. But if you go into a military organization, you're expected to deport yourself a little better than to start screaming at an injured person.
To be fair, she was the only one that noticed that something was wrong, which
She,
I think I
100%.
forgot to mention that scene, but she was the one that was like, guys, the ship is making weird noises. It's like moving funny. Something's off. And DePaul and everybody else was literally told her it was in her head and asked her if she wanted to go lie down.
Yeah, they gaslit the shit out of Sato, to be fair. So like she's already at the point where she's like, nobody's fucking listening to me. I don't know if you know, but there's a crazy alien screaming at me here, and you're trying to tell me to communicate with him. So I mean, panic is somewhat understandable, particularly if you factor in that like her last job was she was a school teacher, right? So she's not like this isn't a thing. This is her first experience going, like it's all of their first experiences going out into a situation like this. So I guess that kind of explains some of it, but yeah, I see what you mean.
But just keep that in your mind. I have another idea of what this show actually is that we'll come to later, but keep that in mind that it's a startup organization. Right. It's like we're watching like WeWork. This is the WeWork.
The WeWork documentary.
They're going to planet Vulcan to set up rentable office spaces.
It's like Uber, but for space. Sorry.
They've got the world's first space Uber. My father died before he could see this self-driving spaceship. Okay, so the lights have gone out. The aliens are attacking. It looks a lot like a scene from Aliens because they're crawling on the ceiling. Nothing's going on. Archer's about to peace out to go to the bridge to find out what's going on, and they attack. They fight off the aliens. They kill one of the what were they?
The Suliban.
Suliban. They kill one of the Suliban, but the Suliban make off with Clang.
Clang the Klingon.
Clang the Klingon, which sounds like a children's book, doesn't it?
It is. There's a lot of Dr. Seuss between Doc Fox, Clang the Klingon, and then Trip, Travis, and T'Pol.
I think Trip, Travis, and T'Pol was a 90s alternative band that I had a couple of their albums. Clang is gone. T'Pol's reaction is, well, mission failed. Let's go back to Earth.
That's done.
You messed this up. We told you were going to mess this up, and you messed it up. And Archer's like, no, we're going after him. And you are not calling Starfleet to report on this. Takes T'Pol aside into his little room, probably because we know Porthos is actually the one in charge, so he needs to be present for any. Archer comes out with some major daddy issues about his father and how the Vulcans cock-blocked them on the Warp 5 engine, because the Vulcans, they have been perceived as withholding information that would have let humanity build their own Warp 5 engine. And he actually says, and this phrase comes up later, my father deserved to see that engine built, which I thought was very interesting. This is a very crabby show. This is a very crabby crew.
Very crabby. And going back to your startup mentality, very entitled. Like, I deserved to see this. My dad deserved, like...
This ship is being led by a Nepo baby.
Nepo baby, exactly.
I thought you could not get a crabbier crew than Deep Space Nine, but boy howdy.
No, Deep Space Nine are jolly in comparison.
They're giving each other back rubs compared to the way these people.
They're doing a fucking Broadway musical.
They're having Employee Appreciation Day on Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, at least on Deep Space Nine, they have respect for each other.
That's sort of what I'm getting back to, is like Deep Space Nine is made up of, it's the island of misfit toys of Starfleet, but they're still...
Yeah, they don't all like each other, but they respect each other.
That's interesting. And I think it has to do with going back, and I think so much of it has to do with the Vulcans versus the humans, and respect is a really interesting way to think of it, because in every other Star Trek, you know that the person at their station is an expert at what they're doing. They are fully trained, and you have every confidence that they can do what they are supposed to do. That is the baseline given component of it. But here, the Vulcans are going on the exact opposite assumption, right? So she is coming in as, you guys are a bunch of idiot frat boys who don't know what the fuck you're doing. And that sort of plays out.
She's not wrong.
She's not wrong.
She's not wrong. She's just obnoxious about it.
She's obnoxious about it.
Again,
and then therefore they have chips on their shoulders about it, which is also understandable, right?
getting back to the startup metaphor, it feels like the Vulcans are the government regulators who are coming in and telling them what they legally can and cannot do. And meanwhile, they're trying to hotwire the gas system into, the fire.
Yeah, no, it's that don't do the thing. I'm going to do the thing,
Archer tells T'Pol, get the hell out of here and make yourself useful. It's giving her a real dressing down.
He also gets real violent. Is that when he threatens her with violence, or is that earlier?
He threatened her with violence earlier in the hospital, but I don't think that was the only time.
Yeah, no, I think it happened a couple of times. He was, as you said, more than grumpy. He was super aggro.
Now we go down to Medbay, where Phlox is performing his alien autopsy. And Phlox really loves his job, and he's giving off so many genial vibes that he starts to come off as a serial killer. Look at this organ. This shouldn't be here. Oh, this is very fascinating. I almost expect him to pull something out and start nibbling on it in front of Archer. I do actually like Phlox, possibly because he's the only character with any chill on this entire freaking
he's
show.
Chill AF. I mean, that is for sure.
And again, he's not wearing a Starfleet uniform, so he might just be like the civilian, whatever race he is, the civilian contractor.
I think he is, because at the end, he's already agreed to stay on. So it's not like he was assigned there. He's just there.
I thought it might be because he is an alien. He has experience dealing with all these different.
Yeah, but I agree. I think he's sort of a contractor, and he's there of his own free will.
Yeah, but that's what I thought when I was watching TNG about Deanna Troi, because she was not in a uniform. And it wasn't until the 5th season when she asked for a promotion that I realized she was actually in Starfleet. I fully just thought she was like a third party.
It's a great
contractor that they'd hired.
And Deanna Troi and Sato may have some commonalities there, because it's not, Deanna didn't panic the way Sato did, but she certainly wasn't trained in the same way that,
Yeah, it makes sense to me that a lot of people in Starfleet, especially people who are trained in more these sort of side academic-y things,
right,
are not going to have the same crisis training.
Yeah.
So to find the alien ship, they're going to have to figure out the plasma decay, so that they can follow the space footprints through the ether. Trip and T'Pol have to work together. This is going to be crazy. They hate each other.
Do they, though?
Wait, sorry. Is Trip the one with the Southern accent?
Yes.
Okay.
Trip is, yes. And that's how I remember it, is that it's Trip and T'Pol. Those are the two that you always see together. It's T and T. And don't point out that there's another character who has a T name. It's going to screw me up.
Friend. But you are right.
They have to work together. T'Pol makes a joke, basically a dick joke about his sensors, about how they're not developed enough. Trip doesn't take this very well. And this is the second point in about 10 minutes where deserve comes up. And Trip says the captain deserves to see this mission completed, and is kind of laying it down on her. So again, it's sort of entitled-y.
Yeah, it's very it coming from the two white men on the two key white men on the show doesn't help, right? It does feel
to the same woman.
To the same woman.
To the same woman who is in a position of semi-authority in some aspect, because she is the Vulcan observer on this.
And who
actually knows more than them.
Yes, for sure knows. T'Pol is dealing with the problem that women go through all the time. I know this, and I'm going to have to dumb down what I'm saying for you to understand it, or I'm going to have to figure out a way for you to think this was your idea.
So I know that this show came out in 2000, 2001. This is the part for me where the dialogue starts to feel like it was written by AI, because there are key points in this section where they use words incorrectly. It's noun, subject, all this, it all works together, but it doesn't make sense if you think about it, because Trip says to Paul that he has loyalty to Captain Archer, but then loyalty is an emotion, isn't it? And that's his peace out. That's his peace outline. And was I don't think loyalty is an emotion.
It is not. It's not. Not really. No.
It's kind of a state of experience where that people,
emotion might drive you to loyalty, but
right.
But that's not necessarily the only way you get to be loyal, or to get loyalty. I mean, respect also will do that. And is respect an emotion?
Exactly. I don't know. So they need to find the decay rate of the plasma, but the Enterprise's arrays aren't sophisticated enough. They have little baby sensor arrays. Nobody has an office on this ship, so they all decide to have their meeting in the engine room. Sato walks in and freaks out that they're all standing next to the Warp 5 engine, which again points out to me that should she be on this mission?
That is fair. That is fair. However, I also feel like it's a brand new thing. They have never had a warp drive that's gone this fast before. And standing right next to the giant glowing thing, I feel like if you've never done it, maybe I'd ask that question too.
Yeah, to be fair, my first time watching TNG, I also asked that question during the very first scene when they were standing in front of the warp core and it was like all weird and glowy. And I'm like, should they be that close to that?
Seems safe. This doesn't seem safe at all. Yeah.
That's a good point. In my defense, I will point out that one of the things I use to help me sleep sometimes is I have an ASMR recording that is literally Star Trek Next Generation engine idling for 24 hours. And I just sit there. It's incredibly relaxing.
They must sleep really well on those shows.
I'm back on my Sato noise again because she comes in. Her contribution to the meeting is, I've managed to translate what Klang said, but none of it makes sense. Did you really translate it then?
Yeah, like maybe you just got it wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I think again, to your point of not using the right word, maybe she meant transcribe, not translate, because that would then make sense. Like, I've written down everything he said, but it doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, if I'm doing Duolingo and it asks me, ¿Dónde está la biblioteca? And I just start putting in, the Simpsons Purple Monkey dishwasher. I have not translated this.
That's right.
Then she follows up with, Archer asks, did he mention anything about Earth? And she says, Earth is not even in their database, but there are 4 words I couldn't translate. They're proper nouns. The name of the planet Earth is a proper noun.
Yeah.
So I have a theory. I want to see if you guys back me up on this. Do you guys remember when Obama was president and he was giving a speech in Africa and there was a guy standing next to him that was supposed to be doing sign language and it turned out the guy didn't know sign language and he was just making gestures?
Was a fucking legend, man.
I'm starting to wonder if maybe Sato doesn't actually speak any, like she's not actually a linguist.
Yeah, she's fake it till you make it.
Because all we've seen her do is talk to these people and like just making like bird sounds in her throat on this Hawaiian island. Did she just sneak on? Did she do the thing where you submit a resume and they never check her references?
I mean, it really, I mean, I suppose it's possible that like she knows many languages, but that doesn't necessarily mean she's good at learning an unknown language.
It occurs to me that obviously the Vulcans know who the Klingons are. I mean, but they wouldn't they have like a basic Klingon to Vulcan dictionary that they could?
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird that they didn't like give them their universal translator. Why
well, they had the universal translator. It was just broken.
But they didn't have Klingon in it. At least it didn't seem to.
No, that was, I think when she tried to use it, it was just broken.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I got one last thing on Sato for this section, and then we'll move on here, is that she lists 4 words that are proper nouns that she didn't know, one of which is Rigel. Rigel is a star system that we as human beings in the 20th and 21st century know.
Yeah, like she could have Googled that.
She's a linguist, not an astronomer, you guys. She's not even that good of a linguist, as we've established.
T'Pol points out that Rigel is a star system, and the 10th planet of that system was where Klang's ship went before he crashed on Earth. Archer asks why she didn't share this information before, and she says the Vulcan High Command told her not to. This, of course, pisses everybody off.
I think she gets threatened with violence again at that point.
She's really good at bringing that out in people.
Oh, sure. Blame the victim.
Yeah. She is just stating things that are true.
It's true. She had to follow orders, and they should understand that to some degree.
If they were a military organization, but they're not. They're a startup.
Fair.
She should have said, I'm sorry, that's Vulcan proprietary IP. I can't share
and then
that.
They'd have been like, oh, okay, fair.
Okay, cool, fair enough.
cool.
All right. They're going to open up the Vulcan star charts to find Rigel and fly this. Now we come to Suliban, our interrogating Clang. He basically says that he was supposed to meet someone called Saren, who was going to give him a message, but Saren never gave him any messages, and they trust what he's saying because apparently they have truth drugs. We've arrived on Rigel. And as I mentioned before, we are now switching to Starfleet Casual, which is they all get these sweet windbreakers on.
I love Starfleet Casual at all time in all versions of Trek. I love Starfleet Casual.
I love these jackets.
Ridiculous and wonderful.
They're purple. They're kind of shiny and have like a texture to them. They were great.
It very much reminds me of a windbreaker I had in like 1983, where it was like that fake satiny stuff. T'Pol advising them that they are going down into, again, she's telling the truth. She's just, but everybody
just
gets angry
simply
at her.
Trying to prepare them.
Okay, you flipped me over on this. T'Pol is just giving them the honest truth, and everybody's angry about it. And she's like, okay, we're gonna go down to this space station filled with space hobos. Just be careful about what you expose yourself to. Trip makes the lame, even for this era, joke of, well, you telling us not to drink the water? They're going to get that Rigelian revenge. She said, no, it's okay. You can eat and drink whatever you want, but avoid intimate contact. Yeah. So this is the point. It starts to feel like this is a Star Trek porn parody where all of the sex scenes have been cut out.
I mean, this isn't all in Riker's holodeck, right? Like, did he create this program?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. We are getting into the sexy part of the show. Every interaction between a male character and T'Pol feels like it could lead into like, a really hardcore scene at any moment. They go down, and this is a junky space. Well, it's not a space station. It's on a planet. When you get into Next Generation and later shows, there are basically two ways that civilians dress. They are either space hobos or they are wearing diaphanous robes. And Rigel 10 is firmly in the space hobo camp, to the point where when they first arrived there is literally a garbage can fire. They don't have a little futuristic space heater, that they're doing. There's literally like broken up pieces of a wooden pallet that they are just like heating themselves over. It's very Dickensian. As they're walking along, Trip sees some freaky shit going on behind a door with a smoky glass panel. Maybe it's an assault. Maybe it's just, some BDSM stuff going on. But he's very intrigued and starts to walk towards this until T'Pol literally drags him away and says, don't concern yourself with that. So here's my nomination. We were going to have an ongoing category. Where's Riker in this simulation? Riker's behind that door.
That's fair.
Maybe he and Deanna are having a weekend away, or maybe it's just they decide to split up. So they're going to try to find information on Clang. So I need to make sure I get these names right. It's not Trip. It is Malcolm and Travis. Right. End up going to an erotic butterfly show. And what this is two humanoid female women.
They're in bodysuits or paint.
They're either in, you can't tell if these women are wearing bodysuits, but it's not clothing. That's not even the weirdest part. The weirdest part is that they are eating live butterflies with their frog-like tongues.
I have to say, the one thing that I noted outside of the weirdness of it was it's kind of nice to see bugs in Star Trek. Normally you see bugs in Star Trek, they're either like giant and coming to kill you or you're turning into them. You don't just randomly see, here's a bug, and there's going to be bugs, surely. That is how it should be. There should be bugs. There should be roaches in space. Why not?
So the two of them are talking to a guy who I dubbed Mini Pizza the Hut. He's just this guy who kind of looks like, you remember that old short about them flying to the moon and it's like a pie face? He has that kind of face. They don't establish who this guy is, but apparently they've been talking to him for a while because they're like, okay, where did the Klingon go? He's like, I'll tell you that later. Do you want to get to meet these ladies? Now, the weird part is Malcolm is super fascinated by this, but the part that fascinates him is, are those live butterflies or are they holograms? And I just have to imagine that there's a scene later where we go into Malcolm's quarters and it's just lined with butterflies all across the room.
I could see that.
I literally need to take a screenshot of him watching these two dancers and say, that's my
I
fetish.
think. Oh, I thought you meant he just collected butterflies.
Yeah, that's what I
He's just a
thought.
nerd who collects butterflies under glass, and he's like, "Oh, maybe I can add some to my collection."
It's both. It's one that he's into butterflies, and second, this has unlocked something within him. Again, getting back to the idea that this is a porn parody.
Fair enough.
Now we're in the space emergency room.
Do we know why they're there?
No, none of it is very clear.
Okay, I thought maybe I missed something.
They just seem like they randomly wandered around and maybe they went there because they were like, well, maybe he was hurt. I mean, calling the hospital is a logical thing if you're looking for somebody, I guess.
I semi-recall that they were waiting to talk to a doctor. So they're sitting in, and it looks like an ER room, and it looks like a clinic room in a very poor neighborhood because everybody looks very shabby. Trip sees there is a woman with, I presume, her child, and the child, she has a face mask. When she puts the face mask on the child, he can breathe fine. She takes the face mask off. The kid starts to choke, and she keeps doing this over and over again. This pisses Trip off to the point where he's getting up in somebody else's business. Never, ever get involved in anyone else's business in an ER. I will tell you, it is not worth it. Hey, what are you doing? Paul has to pull him back and explain that in this race, up until they're age 6, they can only breathe a certain kind of gas. So what the mom is doing is trying to wean him off of this process so that the child can breathe the air that everybody else is breathing. This gets into both my points. This is the AI dialogue and the porno part. Because T'Pol says to Trip, humans cannot help jumping to conclusions. And then she says, you should learn to objectify other cultures.
She does say that, right? She says objectify? Because
She says objectify. I rewound it.
Then I spent, and that's wrong, right? That is not how you use objectify.
That's not how you use that word.
I'm a writer. Maybe this is something I just never realized is you can use objectify in that way.
I think, again, this gets something that AI wrote this scene argument of. I think what she meant to say was you need to look at other cultures objectively.
Objective, yes.
That would make sense.
Yes.
If that had been what she had said.
Yeah.
But this being a porn parody, you need to learn to objectify other races. Well, if you want to do that, rewind 2 minutes or wait 15 minutes if you want to objectify other cultures. Because boy, howdy, have we got some scenes for you. So we cut away from them. So they're waiting in the ER. We never see what they were trying to do or who they talked to because the dream team of Sato and Archer are walking along in what looks like the Cleveland Stadium basement from Spinal Tap. It's just pipes going everywhere. Sato is very confused. That's kind of her job. Her question is, wasn't the Enclave supposed to be here? I thought there'd be more people. And Archer says, I don't understand this statement. Archer says, Enclave can mean a lot of things.
And I don't think I think thought Enclave and Conclave were the same thing. Maybe because conclave, I can see, okay, you're expecting people to be in a conclave. There's supposed to be people, but enclave basically means nook, right?
It would be funny if Archer had a different delivery because his thing is it's all mysterious and serious. Like enclave can mean a lot of things, and it would be just like if he was just tired of talking to Sato and he was like, enclave can mean a lot of things.
Do we think the script was written in another language and somebody translated it?
That's actually exactly what it sounds like.
It was written in English, translated into French, and then back into English. So while they're wandering around in Tube Town, Suleiman's attacked. The Pebble people are back. They get captured, and apparently Trip and T'Pol also got captured because they throw Sato into a space jail.
Yeah, I was confused about that.
We don't ever really know why. It just happened.
They're just also in the cell. They just wandered.
No, I'm telling you, it happened in the sex scene that was cut.
Right.
Archer gets taken away, and he is taken away, and he meets a hot chick. She, like T'Pol, is wearing a combat bustier. She has a little hood on. She comes up and is questioning Archer about what's he doing here. Why was he looking for Clang? What was he trying to do to Clang? And Archer just said, I was just trying to take him home. And then she walks up and lays a big old smooch on him. then steps back, turns into a pebble person, to which Archer replies, well, that's never happened before. And I said out loud, it's okay, we can just cuddle. Her name is Saren, and she is a Suliban, but she is not part of, what is it, the Enclave? She's not part of the Cabal. She's the good guy.
Is it the Conclave?
I don't know. Well, Conclave can mean a lot of things. Yeah, that's true. Words can mean a lot of things. And apparently she had to kiss him because she has also been genetically modified. Obviously, she changed her appearance, but she can determine trust, but only through close physical contact.
That's such an inconvenient way to determine trust.
The only, so first of all, like, this race has this technology that can presumably use like something in your saliva to determine trust, but instead of like building a device that they could like put in your mouth, they're like, what if we build it into our genes, and then if we like, I put my tongue in your mouth, then it's the only way for it to work.
I mean, I just want to understand how this works, like in normal everyday life. Like, okay, time to do this business deal. Pucker up.
Time for your COVID test. Come here. Again, this gets into the idea that this is a porn parody. And again, I took some notes because I was like looking up. The 7 of 9 costume was obviously objectifying on Voyager, but this show just goes to a whole new level. So it's like, okay, what is going on in television at this point? And I found out that Baywatch had just ended. Huge hit, obviously. And then there was another show on USA called Silk Stockings. Do you guys remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Where it was a different sexy crime every week. It's hard to remember that was the vibe, was that, okay, we're going to completely sexualize these characters, and that's going to draw in viewers.
Sorry, I've never seen 7 of 9, and I just...
Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah. And this is, that's the other thing I was going to say, is that this is after Voyager, right? So we've already...
Oh, this show is after Voyager.
Yeah. Well, what I mean, the show is, I think this is after 7 of 9 was introduced, that Enterprise came out. So they knew the popularity of 7 of 9 because 7 of 9, yes, was extraordinarily objectified, and it ended up, because Jerry Ryan's fucking brilliant, ended up being an incredibly good character and a really one of the most interesting characters in Star Trek. So I wonder, but of course that was not the point. The point was that everybody went, oh my God, she's so gorgeous. So they were like, let's do the same here. I think, we have a non-Starfleet woman and she's curvy. Let's get her into that onesie.
It's super crass, but you have to remember 7 of 9 was brought in to sex up Voyager because Voyager was doing okay, as I recall.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's the same. I mean, it's not, again, not that different from Deanna Troi, who was in ridiculous outfits.
Yeah,
but not like what it has even just been in this episode.
It's the evolution, right? It's however many years later now.
And it's hard to remember that there was a time when they were really okay with sexualizing characters especially on Trek. Because now I don't, even with Strange New Worlds, which is supposed to be the prequel to the original series.
Right. It's pretty sexy.
It is very sexy, but you don't see the female characters walking around with like the mini skirts and the...
No, because it turns out you don't actually need to do that to be sexy.
Yeah. Right. How odd is that?
Saren tells him that she gave Klang a message. She gave him evidence that the Suliban, the bad guys, are performing false flag operations inside the Klingon Empire to convince them that one faction of the Klingons is attacking another. They're basically trying to collapse the Empire. Why are they doing this? And then Saren says, probably the most important phrase of this entire episode, they're fighting a temporal Cold War.
Look, you guys, I feel like we have to... I feel like if I start talking about the temporal Cold War here, we're never ending. I feel like we're going to see a lot more of the temporal Cold War, and I am angry about all of it, and we will...
I can't imagine what it might mean. Like, I understand what temporal means. I understand what Cold War means. But otherwise, like, I don't understand how these can go together. Because if it's just like two sides prepping for a war, how do you do that for something that's temporal?
Oh, I assumed it was two sides like getting better and better technology to compete with each other, like the Cold War, like this mutual
because they like expect a war, like you expect a war to happen,
but
you're just like,
and this mutually assured destruction, right? They keep upping it, and
yeah, but how does it time travel?
Because they're getting their technology from the future, presumably. They're getting that fancy technology from the future, is my assumption.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's my assumption.
Okay. Yeah, like temporal war, I could totally understand. It's temporal Cold War, which I find very confusing.
I think a temporal war would mean I'm going back in time to kill somebody versus it's a temporal cold. Why do I know this? Because it's a temporal Cold War. They're going forward in time to get technology to use in the present.
Temporal Cold War can have a lot of meaning. It explains that they're getting instructions from the future. And Archer has the best. I highly recommend you go back and watch this, because as she's explaining the temporal Cold War, they're getting instructions from the future. Archer goes, "Huh?" It is one step away from a meme of a dog with a tilted head going Baru. But none of that matters. No time for that, because now the bad guy Pebble people are attacking. They kill Saren. We are down a hot chick. Hot chick down, everybody. Hot chick down.
Hot chick down. Alert.
Her last words are find Clang.
Can you imagine your last words being find Clang?
I am going to say that on my deathbed.
Cling the Klingon.
Please, let's make a pact right now that the three of us on our deathbeds will yell find Clang.
Just imagining either of your spouses coming to me. There's been a plane crash. Her last words were that she was thinking of you and find Clang. The Starfleet crew manages to all find each other. Where the hell did Mayweather and where did they come from? How did they get here? We don't know. They
got caught by the butterfly ladies, I assume.
It's apparently when they got here, they parked their shuttlecraft. Oh, we forgot to talk about the transporters. They couldn't transport down to the planet because transporters are not approved. They have never been used to transport a live being.
Yeah, they're only used for cargo right now.
Sorry, Bill, the transport devices.
Yes, the transport devices. I understand that the name of things evolve from like information superhighway to World Wide Web to things like that. For some reason, it bugs me when they do this. Like the Klingot thing bugged me. The transport device. Like we don't have the official name. Like
to me, it feels like a nice touch to be like. Of course, people wouldn't be calling it transporters.
Yeah, and the same with the Klingons. I think it was like it was kind of cute. Like, oh, of course you're gonna mispronounce that name because you've never heard it before. That's what you're gonna hear. Like.
Yeah, and how many times Star Trek, all the planets are, and the aliens and their planets always have basically the same name.
Well, they don't know the name of Rigel, so I guess.
Right. I mean, how many times in early 2020 did I say Corvid-19? Right?
That was when you were being attacked by crows, and every time you left your house.
19 fucking crows. That's why we had to stay inside, right?
I mean, I'm surprised that Star Trek hasn't changed the name of Earth to like Humana or something.
Oh yeah, Gaia.
Because truly, all the planets and like the aliens who live on the planets will have basically the same name.
Well, don't they refer at? I might be mixing up. Don't they refer to humans as Terrans at some point?
I think they refer to them if they are specifically from Earth. So like, because there are humans who are on Alpha Centauri and things like that.
Right. Yeah, I think but I don't think they ever call it Terra. It's always Earth. It's still
Earth. Yeah. They landed their shuttlecraft on this empty-looking rooftop. When they get there, T'Pol and Archer start to argue like a married couple who can't remember where they parked the car at Disneyland.
Okay, do I remember where they parked? That's exactly it.
Okay, but I liked the scene because the whole episode up till now, Archer and T'Pol hate each other, and Archer has no respect for T'Pol. And when Archer's like, "We're parked over there," and T'Pol's like, "No, we're parked over there," he just goes with it.
Right? He's like, "Okay,"
he discovered some sort of respect for her. Like, to me, when I saw that scene, I was like, oh wow, he's like learning. They're like learning to trust each other's judgment, until she turned out to be wrong.
Yeah, it would have been great if she'd been right.
That's a good read on that, Jamie, and I respect that. But to me, again, getting back to this, felt like the screenwriter was writing this and writing it from the perspective of a married couple. And she's like, "No, we're parked over there," and the husband's like, "Okay, let's go over and check." And this is
Yeah,
this
and
is
then,
going to come
oh,
up
I guess you
for the
were
next
wrong.
for the next 20 years. Archer is going to be bringing up this. Well, remember that time when you said?
And then I had to save your ass because we were in the wrong place.
So imagine if you're having one of those married people arguments while you're under fire from a race of pebble people. Most of the crew manages to get on board. Archer has to leap over to save T'Pol because she's pinned down. He tells her to get on the shuttle. She tells him no. It's like this is the moment. This is the big turning point of their relationship because they're risking their lives together. She says Enterprise needs its captain. He's like, get on the shuttle, and they shoot Archer in the leg, which knocks him out. His one weak spot. Did he get shot in the back? Did he get shot in the chest? Did he get shot in the head? No, they shot him in the leg, and this puts him out like a light.
And they definitely did show that they shot him in the leg, right?
It was in the upper thigh. The observation when we were talking about this before was he's just tired, man. He's had a really long day.
It's true. He's had a rough day. This Vulcan lady's been screaming at him all day. He's just like, this is my excuse to get some fucking sleep.
And now he's been shot.
I just got shot. I'm out. I can't deal with this anymore. Y'all figure this shit out.
I'm gonna go back to my room and pet my beagle.
I
done.
just want to watch my shows and pet my dog for a few hours. That's all I want.
T'Pol drags his tired ass back to the shuttle. They get on board, and she informs everyone that she is taking command of the Enterprise. Now, this is objectively bullshit.
Yeah, I was confused about this.
I think you mean it's objectifying bullshit.
Yes.
She's not even in Starfleet.
She is not in Starfleet. Nobody likes her. Everybody thinks she is there to screw up the mission.
Or it's a spy. She's either there she's either there to sabotage them or to spy on them, or both.
And who's actually
she's basically like a honored guest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
She's the science officer.
Yeah, she's the acting science officer. The chain of command is not super, super clear.
No, but I feel like it definitely wouldn't go to somebody who's not even in Starfleet.
There doesn't appear to be an official second in command.
I was going to ask that because I'm not clear on everybody's
If you think about it from the original series, Spock was second in command and he was the science officer.
But he was also the first officer and he was in Starfleet.
Yeah.
And so I don't know.
But this is objective. This makes no sense, especially how much Trip frickin' hates her.
Well, maybe this is why they eventually figured out they need a chain of command.
We're going to invent it. It's called the chair of command. Later to be renamed.
So they're going to call it the trip of command because it needs to come from someone because Trip invented it.
Is there a wall in Starfleet just filled with Post-it notes, like the startup culture? It's like, well, we'll call it this.
Yeah.
Well, no, that's no good. That's not. We talked to our branding consultant, and Trip of Command didn't work, so we're gonna try to. Star Trek branding consultant. We go to a commercial. This is where I think the episode, because this is essentially 2 episodes put together. This is where I think the first episode,
right? Like, yeah, the first episode probably.
What's going to happen? There. Treacherous. There's a woman in charge of the startup company,
and surely the captain of the Enterprise might die. Sure. That's not a cliffhanger, you guys.
Yeah, halfway through the very first episode.
The pilot episode, I mean, it would be cool as shit if that happened and it ended up being that was not the actual captain, but I don't think that's how that's going to work.
It would be less surprising if they did that than the theme song that they chose for the show.
I mean, to be fair, now that I think about it, that's actually has been done. But anyway, it's a whole nother story.
When we come back from the commercial break, we are in a flashback. And it's baby Archer with his dad flying his little RC controlled spaceship. And it keeps crashing, which is it's a really good metaphor for this. Foreshadowing. And his dad has the immortal device. And I know that we've all gotten this tattooed on our arms. It's the key quote. You can't be afraid of the wind. Learn to trust it. What?
I have more to say about that later.
It sounds like it means something. It's like the Yoda quote from the prequels, where it's like, fear leads to distrust leads to hate. Hate leads to war. It's like you can rearrange these words in any order.
Anyway.
You can't fight. You can't be afraid of the wind. You have to learn to trust it. Here we go, guys. Are we ready? We've arrived at this point.
Oh my God, here we go.
Sexy decontamination shower. It's not technically a shower. It would make more sense if it was a shower.
Correct. I have so many questions about why it is not a shower.
I have had this scene, or I assume scenes, because I assume we're going to get more of these. I've had it explained to me, and truly nothing could have prepped me for the reality of
for this, right?
this decontamination scene.
So, in every other version of Trek, when you come back through the transporter, it
Gets rid of all of your nasty molecules.
like if you picked up a bug, if you picked up anything, it will take care of you. Obviously, they came back on the shuttle. Everybody is A-okay except Phlox informs Trip and T'Pol that they need to decontaminate.
Wait, why do the others not need to do it?
I don't know.
Unclear. It is
Presumably in the
unclear.
porno scene that was cut out in the ER room. They were humping in the ER room.
I'd have been much happier to see. I mean, I would have been just as happy to see Travis and Malcolm in the sexy decontamination scene.
So-
it would feel
So just
better.
to describe this scene, here's how this plays out. Trip and T'Pol are in their underwear. They're gray, they're gray Uniqlo standards. They're Amazon basics. And they have to rub each other down with this gel that is going to decontaminate them. Now,
Makes no sense.
the gel apparently works so well that you can get under the waistband, like you can get under the elastic line, but you don't need to touch the swimsuit area.
Correct. There
You
is
don't
no
need to go-
actually.
You don't need to
touch.
go into any of the orifices. They don't need to put this in their nose, their mouth, their rectum, their genitals, their hair. It's just needs
Okay,
to-
but
They do their ears, though. They do the
Yeah.
creases of their ears, though, but not in.
DePaul did reach under her shirt to get it all over her boots.
Oh,
yeah,
she
she
did.
definitely
Oh,
did
yeah,
that.
She did.
she lifts it up,
Yeah, no, I
but
remember that.
but you don't have to like get fully nude. There are no stalls. You obviously, for some reason, you can't do this to yourself, which is why a shower would make more sense.
Basically, they're like, we just need to rub hand sanitizer all over. It's basically the early days of COVID lockdown.
It's COVID porn.
Like rubbing sanitizer all over our groceries before they came in, thinking that would help.
Literally, just this is sex position.
Absolutely. And there's no reason for the scene.
No.
Like
There
it's
was a point
purely because of
They
that.
were like getting it, they were doing each other's backs.
Right.
And then DePaul goes down on, was it Trip?
Trip
Was-
and
And
Paul.
then does it like on his legs and is getting between his legs. And I'm
Yeah.
like, he could have reached that himself.
He could easily. He
the
could
back
easily
I
reach this
understand, but he
himself.
didn't need you like doing
Yeah.
it on his like inner thigh.
Yeah, and ears.
If they give them one of those long-handled brushes with a loofah on the end, they could have done this themselves. There are no stalls. There are no
It's the future. We don't have hangups about.
exactly. Like, have you guys seen the movie The Andromeda Strain?
Yeah, I
Long
don't
time
really
ago.
remember it.
Because the whole thing, it takes place in this giant medical facility, and like a huge part of the movie is all the steps that they have to go to level by level to decontaminate themselves.
Right.
But they miss literally the filthiest areas of the human body.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like, how do you not decontaminate you get the outsides of your earlobes,
But not the inside.
inside of your
Not
nose.
the
I
nose.
wanted that scene. I wanted the scene where T'Pol was sticking her fingers up
Why
Trip's
did they not
nose.
just have decontamination suits? Like, why were they not just wearing
Right.
suits? On
Great
this
question.
planet?
I'm sure somebody must have done this, but if short form video comedy still existed, I would love to recreate this scene where they're just having the same dialogue, because it's all very serious dialogue about, what they need to do and stuff. If she was just digging her fingers up in his nose.
Is it? Because I did not hear any dialogue.
Nobody heard any
I
dialogue.
have no idea what they talked about in this scene because I was laughing so hard.
I do really hope that Lower Decks eventually takes the scene on,
Oh, yeah.
because they're good about pointing out the ridiculous moments of previous Star Trek.
The idea that like you're with your coworkers and this is just like you have to do this
Every
with
time
your
we come back from an away
coworkers on a
mission.
regular basis.
This is where he points out, like, you're not in Starfleet. How do you intend to be in charge. And her response is, well, my Vulcan rank supersedes yours. Like, yeah, but you're not in.
And you're not, there's no federation. Like, even if there was a federation, maybe I could understand that.
Yeah, you are in a totally different organization.
If a British soldier came over to an army base and said, well, I'm the general, so I'm in charge of this unit now. I don't think that they would do that.
Meanwhile, her nipples.
Okay, this is the point I wanted to bring up. That's 2 points I wanted to bring up, I guess is what I'm saying. Are these the first nips in Star Trek?
Yeah.
I was wondering.
That's a great question, and I did a little bit of research in this. I went down a little bit of a Star Trek nip rabbit hole, and as you do, I believe this is the first instance.
These are our first Star Trek nips.
And the reason that I found an article, it wasn't about Enterprise, it was actually about Discovery. And the article title was, no, Discovery did not have the first nipples in Star Trek. That was Enterprise.
Because I was thinking about it, and obviously, original series is very, very sexualizes the female characters a lot. But obviously, it was the 60s, so they wouldn't get away with that on networks. So they would do things like with the darts in the dress, where it was like, this is very, this is the gathering.
I believe this to have been the first time we actually saw shaped nipples in that way in Star Trek. Like clear nipples.
Yeah, this wasn't just like a little, these were like, they are trying to make sure that you see everything about these nipples.
But they refer to them as nurfles because they hadn't figured out to call them nipples yet. So much rubbing. So Phlox, we cut to Archer in sickbay. Phlox is super excited. He got to try out his eel, his healing eel, the heel.
The heel.
Is Phlox a homeopathic medicine guy?
Yeah, exactly. He's an alternate medicine.
I understand that, in the future of Star Trek, they had, well, we're just going to run this scan over you, and that's going to be fine, and this ray is going to heal your body. But he seems to be very he's been shot by a phaser. He needs echinacea. I mean,
he's keeping all these creatures on the ship. Like, is he feeding them? Like, he has like a whole menagerie.
Yeah, I assume. They showed one because Archer, I think it was literally this thing that he picked up and Archer said, put that down. That's,
Yeah, in the original scene, the marsupial, that was not from Earth.
So this bit of the show started with Archer having his flashback to his childhood, and now he's coming out of being knocked out in sickbay. What if the whole decontamination scene is just what Archer was imagining while he was not?
It was imagining. I mean, it certainly makes more sense if you think about Riker was watching. The sexy decontamination.
And that part is all fuzzy because he's gone over it so many times that the holographic quality has started to decay. It's like an old VHS
computer,
tape.
More nipples.
More nipples.
Enhance. Engage. Oh, sidebar. I don't think we mentioned this. Like the phrase, what's his phrase? Let's go.
I don't think they were doing phrases at that point as much. At least it didn't seem.
There's your Archer joke. Are we not doing phrasing? TNT, the Dream Team, Trip and T'Pol show up. They fill him in that she assumed command. They're super fresh, minty fresh. It would be great if they were just still rubbing each other when they came in. Archer assumes that they are headed back to Earth, but no, T'Pol has figured out the decay structure and they are pursuing the vessel. It was her idea, is the last thing that Trip says. And also, I touched her butt. We're back.
I think it's my turn. So having decided to follow the Suliban, Archer heads back to his quarters and records his captain's log. And he does this while showing off his captain's log in what I would call exquisite detail. Now, just an aside here, I know we spent a lot of time earlier debating the pros and cons of the sexy decontamination scene, but I would like to state categorically that there was not thing one wrong with this scene. I had no problem with Scott Bakula spending an extended amount of time doing calisthenics in his underpants while pondering T'Pol's actions and discussing Vulcans in general with Porthos.
It's crazy. I think I refer to it as Bakula's frontula. You see textures and outlines, and
it is glorious. And I do believe this might be a first.
The detail,
which
on
is
that
crazy
bulge.
when you think of Shatner. Yeah.
That there is a lot of detail in
Say,
that
with
bulge.
as much as the show has been objectifying the female characters, it's nice to see that at the very least they're
It's
going to
nice,
do it with the
right?
men as well.
They're gonna do both. Yeah, they did, and they objectified Trick quite a lot too.
Oh,
It
yeah.
wasn't. I mean,
Right.
it was mostly to Paul, but they were
He
both
was very oiled
very-
up in that scene.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, strong scene, real important to the plot. All of
Before
those
we skip
things.
past this, I have to point out that he's giving his captain's log, hey, but then he will pause and give like little thoughts. But that should be in his log.
Yeah.
The reason that
He'll-
you keep a log, especially as a captain, is so that if the ship is destroyed, they know what you were thinking.
Well, yes, but I feel like it was also he was talking to his dog, right? He was like,
Exactly.
and it was really him kind of figuring out this was an aside. Oh, this has not really got that much to do with what's happening, but I'm trying to figure out my relationship with this woman and how this works.
How do you guys even know what he was saying? Because I spent the entire
Just
time
staring at his package.
I watched it twice. Yeah, I watched it at least twice.
I was looking at his log, not listening to his log.
I will say this categorically, and this is why it makes no sense that I didn't stick with this show. I adore Scott Bakula. I loved Quantum Leap. We just recently rewatched the whole original Quantum Leap and loved it again. I love him. I think he's a great actor. I think he generally is doing a good job with in all of this as best as he can. I have no problem with this, and I will never have a problem with him wandering around in his underpants. I wish he did the whole damn show in his underpants.
That would
I'd
be
happy to see it.
fantastic.
Yeah, I want him to come out like I want there to be a red alert. I want him to come out like scratching his butt, coming out half asleep. What, man? What's going on?
Speaking of this being a startup, that would be a real power move if he showed up to like a battle situation. He's just in his underwear and nobody knows how to
I'm
react.
expecting it, to be honest. In the next scene when he walked out, I was like waiting for him to walk out in his underwear.
Paul called him back to the bridge because they've lost the Suliban ship near a gas giant. And I'm just going to call all of this science magic at the right point.
Right.
I'm not going to try to explain any of it because none of it makes any sense. Anyway, it's just they do some science magic, which she apparently couldn't do until Archer got there, because that's the point where they realized that the ship went into the gas giant, I believe. The Suliban and the fuzzy time guy, Pinocchio Man, realize they're coming. The fuzzy guy says Clang can't be allowed to get back to his home world. We go back to the Enterprise that goes into the gas giant and finds this giant magnetic space station.
It's best
And
bit.
as soon as they get there, they immediately get fired upon.
Yeah.
So they retreat.
Which, by the way, the translator lady, I think she was the one that said, she was like, why don't we have seatbelts?
Yes.
And I've been asking this question since I started watching Star Trek.
I know.
And it's like, what are you talking about? Like making fun of her. And I'm like, no, this is an amazing suggestion.
Once again, gaslighting the shit out of the woman who makes a perfectly reasonable
the
suggestion.
number of times that the ship has like suddenly like lurched and everybody on the bridge just goes flying.
Perfectly correct.
Right. No, she's not wrong at all. They retreat since they're being fired upon to the phosphorus layer, I
Right.
believe. I don't know.
Is
Like I said,
They were going to go into or it was a liquid atmosphere.
yeah, she was like, there's not usually a phosphorus layer under the bloody blood. I'm like, why are you even saying these words?
The words liquid atmosphere do not make sense. You cannot have something cannot be liquid and gas at the same time. Those are two different states.
But nobody can see anybody.
So
in
they
there.
go, they retreat, they realize that the station is held together with magnets. The station is
I'm sorry.
literally held together with magnets. How do they
When
work?
we were dividing this up, I told you I cannot do the last third because I've watched the episode twice and I cannot remember anything that happened here. So I am literally hearing this information for the first
Well,
time.
this is what the rest of the show is going to be like. So yeah, so it's like a big spool in the middle of space that's magnetic, and all of these little hexagonal ships just stick onto the spool in a.
it was actually kind of cool.
It was cool looking, yeah.
I liked the design.
I
of it.
really loved it when I saw it in Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, so they decide that they're going to steal one of those ships using the grappler. They do that. And one more aside, they do actually steal the ship. They kind of jump down, find one, and grab it. And when they grab it, the owner of the ship goes flying out of the ship very conveniently, but also I think they murdered that guy. Like, they just took his ship and threw him into space.
They caught him at the exact moment where he was faking his death for insurance reasons.
So there's a scene that was really odd to me where Trip, Southern guy, and Travis,
Trip
American
is the Southern guy,
are talking to Archer. And Travis, who is the guy who like spent most of his life on cargo ships and knows different ships and whatever, is explaining to Trip how the ship works and how to run the ship. And Trip is fucking clueless. He has no idea, right? He is clearly learning very, very slowly.
Yeah, I was like, is there nobody else on the ship who they could get to do this?
And Travis is like, I can do this. Why don't you let me do this? And Archer goes, no, we need you here, which felt racist as shit to me, to be perfectly honest.
Travis's job on the ship?
I think he's the navigator. I think the idea was they needed him. I think the only thing I can figure is they needed him because they were going to have to sort of avoid the space station attacking them. And he figured he needed the navigator to be able to make those movements, but it made no sense, and it didn't really pay off for Travis. So
or like he probably had like a filming conflict that day. They weren't going to film that scene or something.
And what it turned into was it felt like a good old boys club.
I do remember this scene because it struck me as crazy, because this gets into the culture of they're not taking this seriously, because he's like, okay, we're going to break into an alien fortress. How do you disengage the safety locks? I don't know. Is it this?
Yeah.
Figured it out. So Archer is the guy who's actually started the startup, like he's in charge of the company, and Trip is his college frat buddy who doesn't actually know how to do it, but he's got a little bit of money, so he's got equity in Starfleet.
Yeah, they just want a boondoggle.
I mean, even if it's just the two of them, I was like, well, Archer seemed to be catching on much quicker, so why was Archer not the one flying the thing?
How many people are on this ship? Is there no one else who has a job similar to this?
Right? Do we not? It just, I mean, you have to, right? You can't have somebody doing the job 24 hours a day. It doesn't work. So where's the backup navigator?
But I do remember the scene. I completely agree with you that like this is bullshit.
Yeah,
it
was pure bullshit. It was bizarre. So they get the other white guy gives them like a demagnetizer thing. Malcolm. And so they take that, and he also gives them their brand new phase pistols. And he gives them to them, and this is the first time they're seeing them, and he says, "Don't get stunned and kill confused." And then he sends them on his way, on their merry way, with brand new, presumably untested weapons.
Did they do any training? Did they
any level of training?
No.
Of safety? Any of that? Nope. Here you go. Good luck. It doesn't seem like they planned this very well, because Archer and Trip head to the station in the stolen ship, and they leave the Enterprise. And then as they leave the Enterprise, an argument breaks out, because they're like, we're about to be under attack. We need to move. And T'Pol is like, no, we can't move, because then Archer and Trip won't be able to find us. And I was like, I feel like this is a solvable problem 10 minutes ago when they were still on the ship.
It's the parking lot fight all over again.
The captain is leaving the ship, and he didn't put anyone in charge when he left.
And then presumably T'Pol was in charge because she basically taken over, but then he didn't give her any instructions, like, move 5 meters every 10 minutes, and then we'll know where to find you.
Did he actually tell the rest of the crew, I am supporting T'Pol being in charge, listen to her? Because it doesn't seem like there is literally no one else
on the ship. But I guarantee this is literally the married people parking lot argument all over again. We need to move. Oh no, the last time we moved, all he could talk about was, I didn't know where we left the shuttle, so this ship is going to stay right here.
Stay right the fuck here. Okay. So we go back to Trip and Archer. Trip remains a terrible flyer. Like he bangs into shit, like just like he scratches the paint on the Enterprise in the earlier scene. He does that again here.
Do we know what Trip's job actually is? Did the show actually explain what he does?
He's the engineer, isn't he?
I don't know.
He's the engineer?
Yeah, I think he's the engineer. I think he's the chief engineer. I think Travis is the navigator, and I think Malcolm is the security.
Malcolm is the British guy?
Yeah, the British guy is the weapons guy.
Is the captain and the chief engineer going on this mission when the ship... Don't they have security
that's a great
personnel?
Question. I actually asked that
question.
We were talking about it, and I don't maybe they didn't have them in the same way because there are no red shirts basically coming with them. And I mean, as to the captain always goes on the away missions, even though they shouldn't. Like, to be fair, this is Star Trek, right? They're always going to do that. Trip's a terrible flyer, but they manage to hook on. They get on board the magnet. There appears to be no security whatsoever. They just wander and they immediately find the Klingon, who unsurprisingly attacks them the minute they free him. Klingon's going to Klingon. But they finally calm him down enough and he follows them, but is incredibly unhelpful because he is not stealthy and just keeps screaming in Klingon. So station security immediately finds them and starts shooting at them.
I just love that captain screams in Klingon.
The Klingon actually saves Trip by murdering another Suliban. Once again, there's a lot of murder in this. And then Archer tells Trip to get the Klingon board, and while he does the demagnetization thingy, and then he says, no, you go ahead and come back for me. And he does the demagnetization thing. A bunch of the ships fly off of the space station, and I'm not even actually sure why they needed to do that because they were already had the Klingon and a ship. I don't know why they couldn't just take the ship and go back to the Enterprise.
Yeah,
but in the meantime,
they had to cause a bunch of chaos so that everyone will chase them.
So maybe they had to, we were looking for a distraction, but basically what they do is, again, they murder a bunch of people. Like you literally see these ships crashing into each other.
Well, in their defense, the Suliban were developing a competitive IP that would have really devalued their initial offering of Starfleet LLC.
So, this is a good way to have this, whatever race or people built this thing coming after you forever.
Yeah, they're pissed. You just live. That's an act of war. You're a terrorist right now. So Trip goes off with the Klingon. Archer runs free on the ship. Apparently they killed all the security personnel in that first round because nobody stops him. He ends up in the weird echo chamber the phasey room, which has literally no security. It's presumably the most important room in that. No, he just walks in. Meanwhile, back on the ship, Trip and T'Pol start arguing about going back to rescue Archer. There is a moment actually when they're first landing on the space station where Trip's like, I can't see the thing. Where is it? And Archer's like, turn 90 degrees. And he's like, oh, there it is.
I'm telling you, Trip is his college frat roommate. Yeah.
Okay, so they're arguing. T'Pol says it's too dangerous, and then Archer would have wanted them to complete the mission and just go return the Klingon. Trip makes the very valid point that Archer literally told them to come back for him, but T'Pol says, no, he just said that so that Trip would leave, which, to be honest, shows a pretty solid understanding of the nuances of human emotion. As a Vulcan, that's an interesting little dynamic to pick up on and to use, right?
Again, that is a real power move on T'Pol's part. It's like, let's get out of here. It's what he would have wanted.
She's literally just trying to kill him. So we keep cutting back between the Enterprise and then Archer in the phasey room.
There's no way. There is literally no way that they could get him off of this spaceship. There's no way. I'm just telling you. I don't remember how this episode ends, but I'm sure it ends with him dying on the ship. But he's in the
that weird
transmission room.
And Exposition Suliban is what I will call him, tells him that they are enhancing their evolution. So they're like super awesome now and can do all this weird shit. And they immediately fight. When he first comes into the room, Archer has his phase pistol with him. And the invisible Suliban guy says, do not use your phase pistol in this room. You would not like the way it worked. When they start to fight, the Suliban gets the phase pistol from him and immediately shoots.
Well, he didn't hear that part.
But he said the part that he didn't hear. It's like talking to you, Bill. But he shoots him, but because of the time phasey thing, Archer is able to just step out of the way. And he's like the Flash.
Oh,
and
yeah.
he just walks away and doesn't have a problem. So he then shoots again, and that seems to make the whole room explode, which I guess is what
I was
the guy was
confused
worried about to begin with.
why the first shot didn't do that.
No idea. Maybe it just hit the wrong place.
It hit the plot sequencer.
It hit the exposition button.
There's a button on the wall that says "hit to end scene."
Break glass to end scene. So they manage to get out and they go into the hallway, which is basically then becomes like the disco hallway because it's all strobe lights for the entire scene of them.
Oh, I'm sorry.
fighting.
You mean an actual disco, not Star Trek
No, not Discovery.
Okay,
no, an actual.
Okay.
There was no music like that, but there should have been. And then Archer runs away, and then they're still cutting back to the Enterprise, going, "How do we get to him? We can't get to him." And their arms are flailing, and they're all worried. And Archer runs away, and then the Enterprise beams him on board, which is the only option they had. And I guess that means Archer is the first person to be transported.
No, that's impossible. Maria, no, they clearly established living matter has never been transported using the transport device.
I do really love, again, like Scott Bakula's face when he comes out and realizes he's been transported. He's just like, fuck, what did you do? Like, holy shit.
How amazing would it be if he grabbed his junk when that happened?
Everything good?
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
It makes sense to me that, like, if you invented this thing, you're like, theoretically it should work on a human, but you would never ever test it on an animal. Like, it makes sense to me that they would be like, this is very useful for like moving cargo onto the ship.
Well, and
you can use it to move food. Organics are fine, but we've never
and
actually
I mean, it's going to be like any other technology, right? People are like, I am definitely not using that. You don't know the long-term consequences of being transported.
But the transport room did not look like it was set up for transporting cargo.
Jamie, I know you've only seen a few episodes of the original series, but did you see the episode where they have the transporter accident that splits Kirk into good and evil Kirk?
But
it's pretty amazing. And the way they discovered this is they have I forget what this animal is called in that, but it's very clearly like a chihuahua dressed up in like a fur costume and stuff.
Oh,
but they there's an accident, and one of the dogs is super aggressive and one of the dogs is super passive. And Kirk goes through this, and one of the Kirks is super angry and one of them is super
chill.
Does all original series have to have a lesson?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. It was the 60s, yeah.
But also, I mean, you have seen Next Generation and you've seen Riker's transporter accident.
Yes, I did see that.
Yes.
So all those types of
love a good transporter.
Voyager
accident.
did the best one, I think. They rescue Archer, they fuck right off, they leave that civilization to deal with I guess it's the Suliban, so I guess they've already declared war at this point. It's done.
they leave the Suliban to deal with their 9/11.
They're 9/11. They're Pearl Harbor. And we cut to Kronos, the Klingon homeworld, and Klang, Archer, Hoshi, and T'Pol all go to the Klingon High Council. Once again, Hoshi does a terrible job of
3 people, 2 of whom do not speak Klingon.
Yeah. And we aren't even sure that T'Pol speaks Klingon, because you would think if she did, she might help when the Klingon was screaming.
I wouldn't assume that.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, she might have been like, I can't even deal with these motherfuckers, I'm just going to let them do their thing.
He's saying some really uncomfortable stuff about gender equity and like the need, why we don't need DEI. I am out. I am not talking to this guy.
Racist. So,
Hashtag cancel Clang.
anyway, Hoshi continues to do a terrible job trying to explain what is going on, but eventually Clang goes to the High Council and says something, and she says something like, I think he's talking about being ready to die.
This is Sato is full on in Troy season one episode. I'm sensing anger and resentment.
Yeah, completely useless.
Yeah, no fucking shit.
But eventually the head Klingon guy cuts Clang's hand. Oh
my god, he cuts Clang's hand. Archer, like, let's get out of here. Peace out. Emergency transport.
Examines his blood, which, by the way, is the wrong fucking color, because Klingon blood is pink. Thank you very much. And that was red. They basically find there's some data encoded in his blood cells. And so the guy says something to Archer, which Archer thinks is a thank you, but Hoshi assures him is definitely not, but that he does not want to know what he actually says, which again, I think might just be playing into Bill's theory that she has no fucking idea.
You have one job.
Oh yeah, you don't want to know what she said. That's
well, it's both theories. One stated or it was extremely fucking pornographic.
Exactly. And then they fuck off. That's it. The last couple of scenes involve Archer telling Trip and T'Pol and eventually the whole ship that they're not going back to Earth because Starfleet has given them the okay to just go explore.
They got their government approval to continue with their...
Which I feel like there might be one or two like maintenance guys who thought this was a 2-week gig and are like,
don't they have to go
back? Are you saying I gotta just keep going?
Like, don't they have to go back first to like get their forever crew or whatever?
Like, do something.
Because even like they don't even have their full crew, right? Because the whole thing, like, what's the translator lady? Is her name Hoshi?
Hoshi, yes. Hoshi Sato.
Yeah, like he had to beg her to come with them.
Right, because it was supposed to be 3 weeks.
So presumably there are other people who were going to join 3 weeks later.
But Archer tells T'Pol that he wants her to be the new science officer, but he can't ask for it. Which again, I mean, yes, makes sense, but also plays into her like, yeah, of course you
can't ask for it.
You can do anything. Like she's like, fine, I will go and request it because you guys are clearly going to kill yourselves without me.
Yeah, you cannot admit to your command that you actually need me on board.
Yeah. Yeah. So of course you don't want to say that you need the girl, so I'll just go fucking save you again because that's how it's gonna be. I really do like the idea of T'Pol as just like a pissed off woman in any tech company ever, you know?
Who's like holding the whole thing
which you have no experience with.
The curse of the competent woman, you know? But
I hope in later episodes we have T'Pol's log. It was like statement to human resources regarding Captain Archer.
That's right. She's writing it all down. Make notes on everything, girl. So they pick a random planet and they head for it. Travis asks the very reasonable question of, hey, there's an ion storm in front of us. Should we go around it? And Archer says no, because you can't be afraid of the wind, which, okay, but if you can't avoid it, why would you not avoid it? I mean, tornado warnings aren't anything to be worried about. You can't be afraid of the wind. Just go stand outside.
Should he have looked at the camera and gone, I have faith.
Okay, this was very fun, and we've only gotten through the pilot
Future episodes will not be this long. I promise.
Do we have a wrap up? Like, what did we learn?
I didn't learn anything. I mean, I do think that the context of this is a shitty tech startup there's a lot of things that make a lot of sense.
Yeah,
there.
I'm still like
And-
confused about the conceit of the show. So now is the show just going to be like going from planet to planet? Like, what is their purpose? Like, what is their, do they have like a directive of any kind? Like, what are they supposed to be accomplishing?
I think it's the first Enterprise in that it's purely going at like just like TNG or the original series. They're there to explore, so they're just wandering around, and they might get directives from Starfleet, and clearly they've started a couple of wars at this point, so that's going to become a problem at some point. But I think initially they're going to just kind of go and look at places. See what they can find.
What kind of sex shows do they have in this culture?
Yeah, that's all that it is.
It's Vice Trek. It's like, what kind of...
The next episode is Jamie is going to watch it.
Yeah, and I'm going to be the only one to watch.
Okay.
She's going to explain it to us, which is going to be glorious.
And again, I expect future episodes will be shorter, especially because only one of us will be watching the episode, and it won't be a double episode.
Send us an email to the email we don't have.
Send us an email to insert email here.
We're doing a temporal social media campaign. We're getting advice from the future. We're getting SEO from the future.
Look, here's the thing. If we could get advice from our future selves, I'm pretty sure I know what they would tell us about this podcast.
Do not do this podcast under any circumstances.
This is what will ruin you.
They just send us photos of us, like all our mugshots of us standing there, like Haggard looks like.
It all started with the podcast.
Gunned down as he escapes podcasting comp. And that's all for this episode. If you want to connect with us, you can email us at enterprisesplaining@gmail.com. You can find us on Instagram, where we are Enterprise Splaining, on Blue Sky as Enterprise Splain. And if you want to support this podcast, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/Enterprise Splaining. And make sure to subscribe, rate, and write a review for us on your podcast app of choice. Thank you so much. We'll be back next time.
Computer and program.
You guys want to hear just my notes that I wrote about the scene? Stripped down to underwear and oiled themselves. Nipples. Camera close-ups. Rubbing each other down. Rubbing it on her boobs. Why was she doing his legs? Those were all my notes.
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network. Be part of the crew and help support our shows by donating to our ESO Patreon or by shopping at the TeePublic store, which can all be found at www.esonetwork.com. The ESO Network, your station for all things geek.